procurement trainee. Over the course of his career, he worked as a procurement analyst, a contracting officer, a branch chief, and a member of the Senior Executive Service. While he's a member of the Senior Executive Service, he was the Director of the Division of Administrative Services for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, as well as the Director for Program Planning, Budgeting, and Program Analysis. Mr. Flynn retired from federal service in 2009 and now serves as a consultant for the Centeva Corporation, primarily providing acquisition-related training to NRC, the VA, and the CDC. Mr. Jones retired in 2001 after 23 years of active duty service with the Air Force. He then went to work as a senior procurement analyst for khaki dynamic systems in support of the Pentagon renovation program. He worked for the White House Military Office in policy plans and the Requirement Directorate. He also worked for the Defense Manpower Data Center as the Chief of Acquisition Management. Currently, he is the Chief of Procurement Directorate for the Veterans Affairs Strategic Acquisition Center. Please welcome Mr. Jones and Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, and good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's working, okay. All right. This morning, Bob and I would like to chat a little bit with you folks about how successful companies are dealing with this new phenomenon, well, not totally new, but maybe new to some, of strategic sourcing. And what I'd like to do is I'll talk a little bit about the history of strategic sourcing, make sure everybody's on the same plane when it comes to that, where we've been. And then Bob will chat with you for a while about his experiences at the VA and the acquisitions that have been successfully awarded. And he's going to talk a little bit about the experiences that the companies that participated in those acquisitions experienced. So hopefully that will give you some insight into the strategic sourcing process that is now being followed by many federal agencies, and hopefully you'll be successful. One second, please. Okay, thank you. The OMB definition of strategic sourcing is a collaborative and structured process of analyzing an organization's spend and using the information to make business decisions about acquiring commodities and services more efficiently and effectively. Efficiently and effectively, two words that are used quite a bit in federal government parlance these days, but also in federal acquisition. Because some believe that the way that the government buys goods and services is not that efficient or effective. I don't know that I would always agree with that, but clearly there is always room for some improvement. The Strategic Sourcing Initiative, again, is to make the government work better and to hopefully give our contractors and the industry appropriate opportunities to participate in these acquisitions. The expected benefits of strategic sourcing from the government's perspective is cost savings. The government obviously is interested in cost savings, and it's intended to enable higher visibility into agency-wide spend and help achieve cost savings by leveraging buying power. And in English, what that means, folks, is when the government buys in bulk, they should be getting better prices, right? It's a real simple concept. It's nothing that earth-shattering or unique. But the federal government spends about $500 billion a year in acquisition dollars. $500 billion. And if the government were to buy and have a more strategic approach to purchasing, there should be some effective leveraging in the cost savings. It's also intended to optimize the process. As I mentioned a moment ago, many feel that the acquisition process is burdensome, cumbersome, or not as efficient as it could be. The Strategic Sourcing Initiative is intended to make the process more uniform and to make it easier for those that are involved in it, both on the government side and hopefully on the industry side as well. There's also an expected benefit of standardization. Strategic sourcing promotes standardization of the acquisition processes across the agency. We have seen many agencies have different processes, many different acquisition processes within unique organizations. Sometimes even within offices, there may be different processes that are followed. They all have the same regulatory oversight, but oftentimes they're implemented in different ways. So this initiative is intended to make the process more standard. And that, from the industry perspective, I think is something that would be helpful as well. And then there's the expected benefit of enterprise collaboration, where the process will provide a collaboration platform to enable cross-office decisions. In other words, multiple organizations within a larger organization should be able to, where appropriate, combine their resources, combine their needs, and go out and buy those goods or services in a better way. Okay, a lot of stuff up here, but I want to just go through the history of strategic sourcing very quickly to put us to kind of bring us into where we are now. OMB first directed that agencies implement strategic sourcing back in May of 2005. And that's a little startling to some because that's 9 years ago, right? Under the Bush administration, the first direction came out from OMB, which told agencies to implement a strategic sourcing program. At the time, I was working with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in Washington. I was in a position, an acquisition position, and I had no idea that this memo even came out. And many of my colleagues at the time had no idea that this memo came out. And it wasn't because we were living in a bubble, I don't think we were at least, but it wasn't something that was aggressively pursued, at least at my agency. But that direction in 2005 directed federal agencies to develop and implement a strategic sourcing program. It directed and it said that the plan must address the governance of strategic sourcing, the goals and objectives. It must have performance measures, and it must have communication and training strategies included in their plan. That's a fairly comprehensive list of to-dos. And again, I think that that's very important for an agency to implement a strategic sourcing program, that all of these, and probably more, must be included. In October of 2005, it also directed that the agencies identify no fewer than 3 commodities that could be purchased through strategic sourcing. And again, in my experience, never had any idea that this had actually been mandated by OMB. In January of 2006, OMB suggested that agencies submit annual report. They did more than suggest. They said you shall submit annual reports to OFPP, which is the Office of Federal Procurement Policy, on reductions in the prices of goods and services, reductions in the cost of doing business, and improvements in performance and any changes in achievement of socioeconomic acquisition goals resulting from strategic sourcing. So think about that for a minute. In May of 2005, the direction came out to implement the plans, implement strategic sourcing. In January of 2006, agencies were supposed to report back on the accomplishments and how well they did. Again, from where I sat in January of 2006, I'm not sure that my agency even responded to that requirement from OMB. But again, it has since then. But again, this was something that I don't know how well it was communicated across the federal government or to the industry as well. In November of 2005, the Federal Strategic Sourcing Initiative was begun in response to OMB's direction. And the Federal Strategic Sourcing Initiative is intended to address cross-agency purchasing. And some of the early commodities that were included in this program included express and ground domestic delivery services, office supplies, print management, telecommunications expense management services, and wireless. And again, the GSA had the lead for this, and the GSA was supposed to put contracts in place for these commodities and services that could be used by federal agencies. Again, the idea was that there was a huge opportunity for savings There was a huge opportunity to leverage the government's needs, and that is what it is still in place today. GAO came out with a report in September of 2012, not too long ago, on strategic sourcing. And what the GAO did, the Government Accountability Office, is that they looked at 4 different agencies. And these 4 agencies were the larger agencies, of course, and the larger agencies that spent a fair amount of money. They looked at the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, the VA, and the Department of Energy. And what they found is that agencies were not leveraging their huge buying power, and that they were only managing 5% of their spend through strategic sourcing efforts, okay? So they were only using strategic sourcing processes to spend 5% of their dollars, which meant, obviously, that 95% of their spend was still being done the old-fashioned way, which had been determined to be not as efficient or effective as following strategic sourcing processes. Leading companies, by the way, and industry, and you folks can probably educate me on this, but industry has been using strategic sourcing for years. And industry manages approximately 90% of their spend through strategic sourcing. And when you think about the amount of money the federal government spends in acquisition each year, about $500 billion, $50 billion is a pretty respectable amount of money. As a result of that September 2012 GAO report, in December of 2012, OMB came out with a guidance entitled Improving Acquisition Through Strategic Sourcing. And this guidance builds on the successful efforts to date and establishes a broad strategic sourcing initiative. It was kind of a shot in the arm. It was the Obama administration this time. The original guidance, of course, was under the Bush administration. The direction designates strategic sourcing accountable officials for each of the 24 CFO Act offices. It establishes an interagency strategic sourcing leadership council to lead government efforts to increase the use of government-wide management and sourcing of goods and services. And it defines characteristics of strategic sourcing vehicles. And finally, it increases, its direction was to increase opportunities for small businesses. So again, this particular direction was trying to bring the strategic sourcing initiative to the next level. It focused on intra-agency and interagency activities. And then, most recently, in January of 2014, GAO came out with another report on strategic sourcing. And this is entitled, Selected Agencies Should Develop Performance Measures on the Inclusion of Small Businesses, and OMB should improve the monitoring of these performance measures and the outcomes. And again, anything that you set goals for, you should have performance measures. You should look at the results of your efforts to see if you're achieving the goals, and if not, you are supposed to make modifications or changes as appropriate. What GAO found was that many of the agencies were not or had not developed good performance measures, and they directed that the agencies do that. And again, GAO looked at 5 of the larger agencies, DOD, Department of Homeland Security, HUD, Department of Interior, and NASA, to see how well they were doing in their performance measures. But they also were interested in how the strategic sourcing initiative was affecting small businesses. GAO found that agencies generally consider the inclusion of small business, generally considered, that's a kind of a neutral type term, I guess. But they found that data and performance measures that would provide a more precise understanding of this was limited. So again, it was kind of, we didn't find anything earth-shattering about the effects on small business, but we think you need to do a better job through your improved performance measures and monitoring. They recommended that selected agencies improve data collection and performance measures regarding small business, and they also suggested that agencies work with OMB to develop common approaches to accomplish this particular measure. Okay, so again, there's been an evolution over the past 9 years, and that just summarizes some of the higher level focus that the OMB and the GAO has put on strategic sourcing. Any questions about that? Okay.
I've got one.
Yes, sir.
There's always some, and you addressed it a little bit here where you talked about the inclusion of small business and how there's a report that came out in January of this year. But there's always a little bit of tension that way as far as strategic sourcing. Sometimes your mind goes to the bigger companies that can handle the larger workloads and stuff like that. So you see there's natural tension with the socioeconomic goals. Do you expect that there more policy will follow up with this, kind of changing the direction a little bit? Because I know like FSSI, I've worked with that in the use of office supplies, and there's a lot of large businesses on that. And that was kind of one of the criticisms, I guess, that we're no longer buying bulk, we're buying from Staples and companies like that. Do you foresee a lot of policy changes as this continues to evolve, to kind of focus more on socioeconomic goals? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. I think that the GAO report that came out 2 months ago is a warning, if you will. There's also, you know, how aggressive the small business community is in bringing any complaints or issues they have to the OMB, to representatives, how loud that voice happens to be. But I think there's always going to be some tension between the small business community and the large business community when it comes to this. And I think that, you know, from what I've seen and what I've read, I think agencies are making a reasonable effort to include small businesses. Bob's going to talk a little bit about what the VA did. I know at the NRC, with some of our experiences, we had some enterprise-wide contracts that we put out, and we had the small business representatives part of the process. They were with us from day one, and what we ended up doing was taking some of the work and setting it aside for small business, and then leaving other parts of the work. You know, we competed that on an unrestricted basis. So I think there's a good faith effort, but again, I think the outcome will be, are agencies achieving their small business goals? If agencies are not achieving those small business goals, then I think part of the argument will probably include the impact of strategic sourcing. Because, I mean, from what I've read and what I've experienced, there's no question that strategic sourcing can generally save the government money. I mean, generally, we're going to buy things at a better price. The other question, though, is, you know, what's the impact on the socioeconomic program? That's important as well. So I think there's going to be a constant balance between those two goals. And again, I think the GAO report a couple of months ago was kind of a warning shot. Yes, sir.
I'm struggling to try to understand and relate some of these implications maybe to the specific program that I work on.
Okay.
But generally then, how will this apply, or how will the future policy maybe extend beyond just commodities to other kinds of otherwise commercial services and products?
Regarding small business?
Well, regarding the overall concept of strategic sourcing. I haven't really seen much of that in the program that I work on, when I work with commercial components that have to be supported at locations around the world. And I don't think we would want to say that they're commodities. They're very important systems for us.
Yeah.
Power conditioning equipment,
yeah.
Uninterruptible power supplies.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things early on, the focus on strategic sourcing was on commodities, was on items, products, right? One of the things we did at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was we introduced, at least in our experience, we are strategically sourcing services as well. I'll give you a real quick example. The NRC, by the way, is it's an independent regulatory agency, oversees the health and safety of the use of nuclear power in this country. The agency buys a lot of environmental support. They buy ologists, they buy geologists and seismologists and other ologists. And this is all about siting nuclear power plants within the country, etc. Well, what we found is that across 5 different offices at the NRC, they were each going out buying ologist-type services from different companies, and they were siloed into these 5 offices. And we came out and said, well, if your needs are relatively the same, if you're buying ologists, why don't we combine those needs into an enterprise-wide type contract or contracts and leverage the buying power that the agency has. So the services, I think, will be included at some point because it makes sense. But to answer your question, one of the things that's being debated and has been debated is whether these enterprise-wide contracts should be made mandatory. When they're made mandatory, that brings it to a different level, and I think Bob's going to talk about that as well with his experience at VA. So far, many of the contracts, at least that I'm aware of, are not mandatory. They're still giving folks the option of using these, and there's debate on both sides of that argument as to whether that's really the best way to proceed from the government's perspective and from industry perspective. But what I sense is that this is still evolving, and it will continue to evolve over time. Yes, sir.
Well, again, for my program, to the extent maybe that the Air Force is trying to attract, if you will, or convince these operational units that they no longer need to be going out there and buying these this hardware and these services that I'm talking about with their impact cards.
Yes.
Whereas they can come to this office here at Hill Air Force Base, and we have multiple award contracting, and I can say enterprise level contracting, I suppose, in place. They can use it as an instrument to acquire those requirements fulfilled. What about across the other agencies? I know that other DoD agencies, the other armed forces, are all using these same kinds of systems.
Yeah.
We certainly haven't gone to that level of
I think
strategic sourcing yet for this.
I think it's learn to walk before you run. Yeah. And one of the things at the NRC that we did is when we looked at establishing enterprise-wide contracts for office supplies, for instance. We said we felt it was our responsibility to make the contract as easy to use and as price-friendly as it could be so that offices would want to use them. We also found it, because of the impact card, we set it up so that they could use their impact card. The only thing that really changed was that they could no longer walk down the street to Staples, but they had a vendor that they could use their impact card to buy these products. The prices were already established, the delivery was already established. So again, we felt that the vehicle itself had to sell itself rather than it being a mandatory type program.
But that interagency,
Interagency, yeah.
That stuff will be coming probably.
That's part of FSSI. I mean, that's part of the theory behind FSSI. But I've read in many of these publications, let's learn to walk before we run. And I think that's really what's happening right now. Okay? Okay. Turn it over to Bob. And Bob's going to share the VA experience and give you some good tips.
Yeah. Like I said, some of the things that he discussed, being in different arenas and stuff, we discussed some of these things, and hopefully I'll answer how we're handling some of the concerns that you have and some of the rest of you have. When I got into contracting in 1990, I've been doing it for about 24, 25 years. There was a perception that it's, we're the good guys and the industry the bad guys. They're out to, bleed us of every dollar and everything. And through the years, as I matured in my contracting knowledge and contracting career, it couldn't be further from the truth. And it's my job as a senior contracting person to train the younger folks that are coming in to replace me, such as Adam Spath, who works with me at the Strategic Acquisition Center. That this is the approach to take. We win this battle together. We don't win it by, trying to have a win-lose situation instead of a win. So we need to get back on course. As he said, I'm from the Department of Veteran Affairs, a large agency. We have approximately 300,000 employees in the Department of Veteran Affairs. And of those, the 300,000 employees, we have the Veteran Healthcare Administration, VHA, which takes care of all the hospitals nationwide, which is approximately 150 some odd, on one of the charts. We do the strategic buying for them. and I'll cover some of the reasons why strategic sourcing, is important. And Mark has already covered some of them as far as standardization. Under the Veteran Affairs, it's the Office of Acquisitions, Logistics, and Construction, OALC, which I would include, if you're familiar with DOD more so, is top of the AT&L, and at that level. Underneath that is our headquarters in DC, Office of Acquisition Operations, and myself and Adam work at the Strategic Acquisition Center in Fredericksburg, Virginia, which sits pretty much right between Richmond, Virginia and Washington, DC. So if you go 95 south, we're about 56 miles south of DC. This right here, Secretary Shinseki, retired General Shinseki, is the Secretary of Veteran Affairs, and this essentially is his tasking from the presidential executive orders that we were directed to implement strategic sourcing. Under this chart right here, all are relevant, but the thing that I think is applicable here is leveraging technology to ensure enterprise management approach, and over in the right column over here is pursue standardization and strategic sourcing, which Mark has partially covered. On the leveraging technology, a lot of times in the government, the concern in leveraging technology is what we can get to do our jobs better. But we also need to realize that leveraging technology is also, when we come out to you all, trying to get the most updated technology, because at the end, you win, we win, because if we're buying computers, for example, used to have a shelf life or a usable life of about 18 months. If we went in and bought one that the usable life is almost out, then we're using old technology, a couple months into the purchase. So sometimes the government has a tendency to be arrogant and think that we know what we want and that we're the experts in the field, but the mindset that I've always taken in the offices that I've been, lucky enough to be in has taken is that you're the experts in the field. You do this for a living. And if you don't stay on top of technology, you go out of business. So why would we not want to come to you to find out what we're doing wrong, find out what you have or what's available in the market that can assist us in doing things better? At the end of the day, I'm a disabled veteran. A lot of the folks that I work with in the VA are disabled veterans. And if I go to a hospital, I would like to have the best technology, working on me that there is. And, anybody else, pilots flying planes, any other, folks that are buying things. So, whether it be our offices issuing statements of objective to you, whether it be supply services and saying, why don't you tell us what is best for us based on current technology? Those are some of the availability things that we have to come to you and allow you to tell us how to do business better or how to get better technology. As far as the pursuing standardization, strategic sourcing and standardizing, we're supporting 150 some odd hospitals nationwide. One of the concerns that I have to explain to folks whenever they're sitting back saying, medical equipment, for example, when we're buying it, doctors have preferences for the type of equipment. We have to find a happy medium between allowing the doctors to get what they want, but also separating out personal preference because it's just something they've used before and they like it. Vice, what is the benefit of this machine over the other one? I bought some optical surgical equipment recently, and the doctor kept telling me it's the best one out there. But he couldn't define to me why it was best, and I was telling him some of the competitive products that were out there that we needed to compete it with, and he, at the end of the day, could not tell me why. Now, one of the things that he could approach was, if the equipment is not standardized in the, way of running, thank you, appreciate it. If the way of running the machine is, the knobs are on this side on one machine, the knobs are on this side on the other machine, they spend, thousands of dollars a year training all the technicians and the doctors how to work on the equipment, how to use the equipment. The last thing that I want is a doctor in an operating room, that's in the middle of an operation, things get heated, and he's like, oh wow, is it the one with the dials on the left or is it the one with the dials on the right? So there's medical reasons, it could be life-saving decisions that have to come into play as well. And when we talk to our customers and we help develop through IPTs, which I'll get into a little later in the planning process, these are the things that we have to, take into consideration, and we have to beat them up to get them to give us information. They know what they want, and because they know what they want, they assume everybody else should understand what they want. So it's our job is to try to take this out, put it on paper, put it out in the most fair and equitable manner to industry and allow industry to compete for it. Now, in Veteran Affairs, we do have, guidance that comes down from Congress that says that we will do 44% of our purchasing from small business. Small business loves that, but on the same token, that directive allows 56% for large business. It's still a big chunk of change whenever you talk about the billions of dollars that are spent each year. So there's enough business to go around. And some of the stuff that we get ready to buy, we can't buy from small business because a good example is right after I got to Veteran Affairs 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we wanted to buy surgical robotic systems, Da Vinci robot systems. Da Vinci's were the only ones on the market that met the needs for what we needed. Some of the limitations that I'll discuss later from that Veteran Affairs has, and most contracting offices, regulatory wise. We have to justify everything we're doing. If it's small business, we have to explain why, why we're going to large business. Even if it's a sole source item, we still have to provide extensive market research, on the $147 million contract that was just awarded for the robotic systems. Why there is nobody else in the world that can do this? Well, first of all, the limitations we put, anything that touches the body, in surgery has to be FDA approved. That was the only system that has FDA approval. There's several systems in the works that are in beta testing right now, and they're not FDA approved, but they're on loan to some of the major hospitals, for the hospitals to use and see if it meets their needs. But in the interim, we're in a sole source environment, and for a contracting officer, sole source environment is a really difficult environment to be in, and I'll discuss that a little bit later too, is industry. Sometimes you use the leverage, much like government uses the leverage, to say, I'm the only game in town, therefore I have no flexibility and I'm not going to work with you. This is, what you see is what you get. Then, 2 years, 3 years down the road, FDA approves the other systems, now there's competition, and the seed's been planted. Now, from standpoint of me, I've had some industry players before that have made me extremely mad, but it's not about Bob. It's about what's doing the right thing. I can set my personal feelings aside because that was an individual I was dealing with, not the representative as a whole, and I still have to do it in accordance with the law. I have to still do it ethically, and personally, and most of the contracting officers that I know and contract specialists that I know, even though they get irritated a lot of times, they don't let it come into play whenever they get ready to do source selections. We have to justify it extensively in source selections why our decision was made, and it has to be, subject to extensive scrutiny. Adam and I and another gentleman just did a $206 million temporary administrative support enterprise-wide contract, and I'll get into a little bit of that. And the source selection document that we had was 400 some odd pages long, justifying 8 contractors that got the award, and it covers 11 regions in the United States that we broke it down into, and it was a lot of fun, a lot of long hours. But the document, to say why we made our decision was not arbitrary or capricious. It was 400 some odd pages of why. Yes, ma'am.
I listened to your lecture discussion just before this too. With the 444-page document, did that go into such things as life cycle costs and? I mean, was it?
No, our document is solely our evaluation of contractors' proposals.
Right. What were your evaluation factors?
I'm sorry?
What did you use for evaluation factors?
The evaluation factors, the ability to ensure nationwide coverage or enterprise-wide coverage. That was a big one. And whenever we had to go out, and I'll go ahead and get into this one, we used since we're directed to go to small business first. We have to go to small business and show that small business, whether it be our first priority is SDVOSB, small disadvantaged, or small, disabled veteran-owned small business. Next one is veteran-owned small business. Then we go to 8A HUD zone, from 8A HUD zone, then we go to all other small business. So we set up a cascading approach, which Adam researched and found this, and it's one that I haven't used in my 24 years in contracting, because if you're not successful, we're not successful. And if we award you a contract not knowing or confident that you have the capability of doing that, not only do we have the issue of, we're picking on as the big government entity, picking on contractors and putting them out of business, but, we also lost a prospective awesome contractor that can support us for the life of a 5-year contract. So some of the scrutiny that we used was the ability for the contractors, if they're bidding in a single region or multiple region or enterprise-wide, to provide us a management plan that shows how they're going to man this, to show us their capabilities, their past performance, that they've done same or similar type stuff before. We also, something I'll discuss later, it can assist you all, is partnering, providing a recommendation. If you're a small business and you're wanting to get a larger chunk of the business, multiple regions, for example, then don't look at it in a negative light that if you team with someone or partner with someone or do, there's a couple more on here that I'll discuss, that the government doesn't view that as a weakness or your inability to do the contract, and we think it's smart business to partner with other agencies to be able to be more successful. It builds your past performance, gives you successful past performance, and everybody knows that we're required to look at past performance on all requirements or justify otherwise. I'm not sure, did I answer any of your what the criteria was?
Were you purchasing widgets or services?
Services. Temporary administrative support services. Temporary administrative was if some of the offices need admin support, and there was about, how many categories? 20 categories. So there's 20 different categories of administrative and clerical support services an office can get. Historically, a lot of government agencies don't know. They'll go in and they'll hire somebody and keep them on contract for 5 years, same individuals in there, but there's a public law that indicates that administrative support service is a personal service, and as a personal service, the government's giving a waiver for us to do that, but the waiver indicates that it will be temporary services not to exceed 120 days, waiverable to 240 days. So the purpose behind this is, if you're going to need somebody on a temporary basis, that temporary basis for you to determine whether you want to create a full-time position or delete the position altogether and absorb it under the other duties within the office. So these are considerations that we have to take into. So we've got the public laws to deal with. We've got what type of contract to put together. Some of the things that I'll discuss later is putting different types of contracts together so that we don't hinder small business, in terms of their max scope. For certain contracts that they won't graduate, certain contracts that we could award it to them, and 6 months into it, they could no longer be, eligible for any contracts, but for task orders because, they graduated out of the small category. I'm gonna move on, and if I haven't answered your question through some of the other stuff, please ask again, and we'll see if we can clarify what we've done. Okay, I'm not going to go into depth on this because this right here is nothing more than the extension of the history. It tells who we are. Office of Acquisition Operations is our headquarters. It tells what their structure and what they're supposed to do. Down below that's a Strategic Acquisition Center, which we work in, and we're just one of many contracting arenas within Veteran Affairs that are doing this type. Our tasking is to put together enterprise-wide contracts that are non-IT related. And the IT related is also under the Office of Acquisition Operations. It's called the TAC, instead of SAC, and they're out of New Jersey and also out of Austin, Texas. So they do specifically IT related. So I'll move on to, okay, when I'm talking about the Veteran Affairs, everyone was documenting this. We borrowed some of the slides from different offices and used them to put this together. 22 VISNs. The VISNs are actually Veteran Integrated Service Networks. I call them regions. So it's an easier way to think about it, broken down into regions. There's actually 21, because if you count the numbers, all the numbers aren't there. The 13, 14 is missing. They created 23 rather than renumbering all the regions. Whenever contractors are used to dealing with region so-and-so, all the paperwork's that way. So, you know, one government agency got smart, didn't change all the paperwork, and left it. He just created one region that combines the two and moved on. Again, in this coverage right here, there's 153 hospitals, 21 visits, 21 regions, and as far as VA employees, there's 300,000 veteran VA employees. Of the 300,000, or actually 330,000 VA employees, about 80% of those work for the Veteran Health Care Administration, or VHA, which is the ones that run the hospitals. And the others are the cemetery agency, you know, that handles, you know, interment of veterans when they pass, and also provide the flags. We have one office that does nothing but buy flags, you know, and there's other agencies or other departments. Okay, I'm going to briefly go through some of the decision process that we do, and it's common sense. You know, what are we buying? How are we buying it? The type of contract. It's simple, but there's a lot of thought, and we get IPTs together. And like he said, the planning is one of the biggest processes that we have. That's what differentiates whenever I was doing base level contracting, and as opposed to doing strategic type sourcing with Veteran Affairs. Is how are we buying it? From whom are we buying? Well, in this case right here, excuse me, yeah, for whom are we buying? Now I'm buying for 330,000, you know, customers, whereas on the base I may have, you know, 2,500 to 25,000, depending on the size of the base. Big difference in numbers. And from whom are we buying? This is you all. And hopefully in the subsequent slides I can explain to you how you can enhance your capabilities of getting some of the business from us. Next slide, I like this. This slide says a lot. It's something that we can use, and I use it as a cheat sheet to remind myself whenever we're putting requirements together that there's a lot more at stake than just the price. You know, you get a lot of younger contracting folks, contract specialists, and you ask them, you know, what's it all boil down to? Well, it boils down to what's the cheapest price. Now, the smartest thing the government ever went to was best value contracting. Used to, the lowest price, and there's an old story about John Glenn when he was sitting on the launch pad, getting ready to be the first man in space, and they told him, said, wow, this is profound. You know, what were your thoughts? You know, I'm getting ready to go into space and touch God. I'm getting ready to do this. And he said, no, actually, I was thinking this thing was built by the lowest bidder. So those are some of the things, change the dynamics. The things underneath are things that are essential to our process whenever we're putting things together, considerations. And even though we may be doing low price, technically acceptable contracting, you know, these things are still relevant whenever we're putting our requirement together to be able to do it. They may end up in the evaluation criteria. They may end up in the you know, criteria that we have. But all of this are things that we take into consideration that helps us put a better contract together that we are happy to live with for you know, 5 years over the life of the contract. An agency that had a contractor that had been the prime contractor for 28 years. I went in whenever I won't say which agency it was, but I went in and my goal was to complete the contract, because with the contractor having been there for 28 years, the contractor was running the agency more than the agency was running the agency, from my perspective. And I saw a lot of things that I don't want to see in contracting, because we have ethics training, you know, multiple times, and you know, at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. And these are some things that, you know, without really getting into the nuts and bolts, sometimes it's a comfort zone. It's a justifying that dollars are being well spent. Sometimes contractors get comfortable and say, if I have a long-term contract, what's my incentive to drive the price down? You know, things may change. You know, computer technology got cheaper. So if I set a contract for 10 years, what, maybe $1,200, you know, at the onset of the contract, now I may be able to go to, you know, some site and pick it up for $300, $400 down the road, but I've locked in a contract that didn't keep up with technology. So then I got to come back to you and say, would you be nice enough to drop the price for me? You know, they're like, yeah, next time we go around.
Why don't you utilize cost plus fixed fee and things of that nature based on what you're looking at? If you're looking to purchase computers, let's say, that drive down, you know, cost plus fixed fee gives the government and the contractor an ultimate, the ultimate flexibility there to adjust to market, while at the same time, you know, allowing you, you know, maybe your services are firm fixed, but
Yeah.
your buys are CPI.
Technology that's, you know, through the tax, and I was using that for an example because I've done a lot of, you know, IT buying through the years. Those are taken into consideration for those type things, and they're weighed in whenever we have got the meetings and stuff to sit back and put these requirements together. And we discuss types of contracts with our, but I will say that time and materials contracts and cost type contracts are two of the least favored contracts that the government has. And what we have to do when we're getting good contracts together is look at the big chart and know that the risk, and obviously the government wants the least risk to the government, most risk to the contractor, if we're willing to pay the price for the risk. So time and materials contracts puts most risk on the government, you know, short of a letter contract, and then firm fixed price puts the best, you know, best situation for the government, most risk on the contractor. You know, you bid up front what the price is. You know, if you miscalculate, you could be stuck with a 5-10-year contract that you're eating cost for the life of the contract. So these things are taken into consideration, but in the venue that we're in right now, we really have no need for cost type contracts. When we're buying products or services, most of the stuff, unless we can justify why there's a reason that you can't provide firm fixed price, then we really, you know, don't look otherwise unless there's a direct benefit to us for that, such as driving price down.
If I could just interrupt, sure. Just to address your question, and this pains me as a former contracting officer, and now I'm in the private industry. The term of the contract, in my experience, of course, 5 years was generally the maximum, unless it was IT. Of course, Senator Cohen gave the government the option to write up to 10-year contracts for IT-related products and services. The other thing is that we felt, in my experience, that we wanted to keep the contractors hungry. And Bob, you know, a moment ago, just said that he, after 28 years, he saw the contractor running the organization. And that happens. And I think, from my experience, we like the idea of recompeting on some reasonable basis. Not, I mean, at one point early in my career, we were recompeting every 2 years. And we finally decided that was too much. But we want to keep the contractors hungry. But the other thing is, when you win a contract, there's a whole lot of losers, right? There's a lot of people, and they want the next opportunity. So that's the other balance that I think the government tries to achieve in the terms of the contracts. I really like the options based on performance. I think that's a great approach to contracting. And I think that's a win-win for both sides.
Yeah, the point I bring that up is a lot of times the incumbent will take the next one because people haven't been able to school up and get smart enough to take. So the government pays for the first 5 years, pays the same guy again for the next 5 years, and then people get smart enough so that person moves on. And so historically, I don't know if people are looking at this, but from a DOD-wide perspective or federal perspective, you're going to pay the incumbent one more time anyway, most of the time. And that's the experience with some of these streamlined acquisition vehicles. People, new players that earn the seat at the table, all they do is either partner with the incumbent, because that's what the customer wants, or the incumbent simply wins again. And so to disband the opportunity to say, you know what, if you win, you actually can get a longer thing, and if you don't perform, do a 3-year basic, 7 1-year options. Whatever the government wants to do to create that hungriness, but still provide flexibility to maintain those services for a longer period. It incentivizes, I mean, especially now in this climate, it would to have something foundational like that for your revenue base would be very, very good.
Right.
I'll say from a contracting officer standpoint, I'll be real with you. From a contracting officer standpoint, I don't go into any requirement favoring one contractor over another. I have incumbents that I love. But I'm a curator of taxpayers' dollars. And like I said earlier, what I feel don't really matter. And I do have the capability of compartmentalizing those feelings and stuff. I have some employees that, you know, if we were on the street, we would be fighting. But in the office, they get the job done for me. My job is to take care of them. And regardless of how I feel about you as a person, my job is to take care of you, protect you as an employee, make sure that you get what you're supposed to get, and those kind of things. Same thing with contracts. You know, the teams that we go in is unbiased. You know, when we did the TASCO contract, the temporary administrative support clerical operations contract, $206 million. we were very familiar with some of the contractors, the incumbents. Some incumbents were already on this contract. And we looked through when we were doing the source selection, and some incumbents got comfortable. Some incumbents, which I'm going to talk about later, regurgitated proposals because they worked the first time and obviously put absolutely no work in. And they were good enough that if they took some time to put a proper proposal together and not be arrogant, they probably would have won a chunk of $206 million. But as it was, they didn't even change terminology that had changed, and it wasn't even relevant portions of it to what it was, because they thought, as an incumbent, I'm going to flip it over the fence, it's yours, hook me up, bud. You know, what's that?
That's a disease, it's called incumbent status.
Yeah, and those are another reasons is sometimes the competition protects you from yourself, protects us from ourselves, you know, and stuff. And I can't speak for all contract officers, because I've been in offices and stuff where there's some contract officers, if I had known about it, I'd put them in jail. You know, but, you know.
We're starting to run over a little bit.
Okay, let me move through. The next chart, I'm not going to, it's more of a process chart. These will be available to you all. And this right here is essentially determination and letting you know as a contractor, if you're getting frustrated early on in contracts, that you're not getting a lot of business. Sometimes the maturation process within a contract is that we consider, you know, as enterprise-wide contracts, we have to sell our customers to use these contracts. Why is this contract better than you going to GSA and buy it yourself? So that's part of this chart right here, is that, you know, by the 5-year point, or, you know, whatever the life of the contract is, we're hoping that you're using 100% of our contract that justifies the cost that we put into the contract. Okay. Challenges and mitigations to the government. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move to yours first, and if we have enough time, I'll come back to the government. Because our challenges really are just to educate you on what we go through to get to you all. So let's go to yours. Okay. So the first one is understanding government contracting processes. If you don't understand what's going on, ask questions. Now, I've been in offices where I've heard contractors, there are contract officers or contract specialists tell the contractors, go look it up. It's available for you. If I got time, you know, to help educate you, why would I not want to? You know, it's crazy. So a lot of times, most of the contracting folks that, you know, teams that I work with, you know, are more than willing to assist you if you ask questions. If you don't, Small Business Administration is, you know, provides training, guidance, templates, will help you put stuff together, often free of charge. They have a lot of retired industry professionals that volunteer their time to sit back and help folks that don't understand the process. OSC is an Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization. They're another one. Business is not always automatic. We get contractors that win a contract, multiple award contract, and think that the business is automatic. They sit back from that point forward, and you know, we send orders to them. Well, on multiple award contracts, we still have to complete task orders, and you need to market yourself to the offices that are, for example, in the contracts that we were doing, different regions. It will tell the contractors, it's up to you to get in touch with the offices there, let them know what you can do, that you're here, touch base with them every once in a while, see if anything's up and coming. Do you have anything projected down the pipes? And they'll tell you as much as they can legally tell you. Know your customer. You know, if we're nothing more than, you know, a money-making venture to you and not a partnership, then that's what it becomes, is a money-making venture, and it becomes who has the lowest price, and we move on. Reach out to your customers, get to know who your customers are, get to know what your customers' needs are, communicate with the customers. You know, and that's what you need if you have contracts with them or if you don't. If you don't win a contract, nothing stops you from going back and talking. Now, sometimes it gets frustrating because if we're in the middle of a lot of contracting things and somebody calls, wants to meet next week, I have to tell folks I didn't want to meet with you, but I can't right now. You know, if you don't mind, give me a call in about 3 weeks. I'll put something on the schedule and we can meet. And if it works out, it works out. And more times than not, it does. Be cognizant of actual needs. Don't over-propose. If we're not asking for a Ferrari, you know, we're only asking for a Chevy, don't provide us a Ferrari. You just priced yourself out of the market. Likewise, don't lowball us if we do need a Ferrari. You you know, don't give us a Chevy and give us a, you know, Chevy with a Ferrari price. So don't over or under propose. Read the request for proposal, request for quote. I'm surprised at the number of offers that we get in that is, you know, that you know, the proposers did not read through it thoroughly and understand what we were looking for. Strategic sourcing, enterprise-wide contracts result in lost business. That's a concept that you know, a lot of businesses have, that putting enterprise causes you to lose business. Some of the things you can do, and in some instances it does cause companies, because if we put less contracts together, less contractors will get contracts. But some of the things you can do is consider teaming, partnerships, joint ventures, mentor-protege programs. That's through the Small Business Administration. Those are ways that you can do it. Large business can assist small businesses. Take on some small business, mentor them. If you're a small business, see if you can partner with a large business. And, you know, it helps your past performance ratings. It helps you get all the credentials that you need to be more competitive next time. Establish GSA, VA supply schedule, federal supply schedules, and consider inclusion on multiple agency MAC contracts, you know, the larger contracts. And one of the things is, ask questions, is if you win a contract, and very, very few contractors do this, if you win a contract, ask for a debriefing. What did you do successful? You know, I'm surprised at the folks that say, whoa, we don't know how I won that one. Well, if you don't know how you won it, why don't you ask me and you can do it again next time? You know, and then ask me what you didn't do right. I was successful. I'll tell you what you didn't do right, and you don't do that next time, and next time you're more competitive. And same thing, you know, typically the contractors that don't win the award, you know, I want to take the time to sit back and explain to you what went wrong to the extent I can. I spent on the Tasco contract, there were two of them that were surprised that I spent an hour each with each one of them. I had the time, and I sit back and spoke with them. And one of the ladies called my boss and told her, I've never felt good about losing before, but I actually feel good about it because the government person took the time to tell me what was going on. So, very critical. Ask for a debriefing. Okay. Read the request for proposal, the quote, instruction, offers. If you don't understand, ask. If we need to clarify it, because we're not perfect, and sometimes we assume you understand it. If you don't know, let us know. We send out clarification. Don't wait until the last minute to submit your proposals or your quotes. You know, a lot of folks, the Tasco contract, $206 million at stake. We had two of the closest contractors to us in Maryland and Virginia. Both of them were within an hour's drive away. Thought they had all the time in the world. Got stuck in our horrendous traffic and didn't make it to our office and lost out because they got in after the cutoff time. And they just walked in and said, anything we can do? And I said, no. And they could have sent it electronically, but they chose to drive it in because they were closer. Avoid recycling proposals. Same thing. Treat every requirement as an autonomous requirement. Sure, you can pick up some of the previous stuff and use it again, but don't regurgitate a previous proposal and think that that proposal may win if it won before. GSA rates. Here's one that I'll try to be as brief as I can. If you have GSA schedules, there's a preponderance of work location. And I wasn't familiar with it because whenever I was doing base level contracting or some of the agencies, I only had to worry about that little area. Now that I'm doing enterprise-wide contracts, we had a problem. We're trying to get somebody that's bidding enterprise-wide contracts, and they're out of Georgia, and the rates in DC for labor are much higher than Georgia rates. His GSA schedule was issued in Georgia, so his preponderance of work location is that area. You know, when he used his Georgia rates to take a look at DC, he called me up and he said, I can't bid. And I said, why could you not bid? He said, because I don't need to meet the DOL minimums. Okay, you can call GSA and you can get them to amend your schedules to allow you to add prices for different places in the United States. Because when people say you can't change the GSA schedule pricing, you can change the schedule pricing. You get with GSA, GSA will modify your schedule and allow you to put pricing in for those areas that you previously could not cover. And that's how you, by looking at the different locations in the United States, maybe in the larger areas, LA is one of the largest areas, high-priced area, Seattle, some of the other places, some places in Florida. Check those prices, and if you can find out the different regions, what the highest area is, then you can work backwards with your pricing from there. Get with GSA and get them to modify your schedule to make you competitive in those areas. And these are just a summary of some of the successes that we've had since I've been there and 2 years with the VA. Adam's been there about 6 months longer. Actually, Adam was on the first team that come in to set up the strategic acquisition center. IPT facilitation, contracts at a certain dollar value require an IPT, and we need facilitators, and we don't have facilitators. So nationwide, if you need facilitation, $225 million there. Savings by competing and capitalizing on economy of scale, 35% savings. Temporary administrative support contract, enterprise-wide, savings 7% to 22%. Event planning, because of the debacle that several government agencies, including ourselves, has had with conferences, we had to set up a conference support contract. Right there, event planning support, $60 million. So I'm not going to go over each one. You'll have access to the slides. But that gives you an idea of the type of services we're doing, the type of contracts, and some of the savings that we're doing on the contracts. And for future expectations within Veteran Affairs, establish a medical surgical prime vendor contract, which there is one right now, it's getting ready to expire. But essentially that is a supply chain management where they take a lot of the smaller enterprise contracts that we have in one contract where we're managing in a supply facility so that when we need things overnight, they're available on the ship. MAC contract for curriculum development with the Veteran Academy, VA Academy. We're in the process of putting together a MAC contract for that. And continue to increase our efficiency by doing enterprise contracts and better planning. We consider 15 to 20% savings successful.